I've done duty at Whitby Lighthouse, but it was a long time ago, and I don't think I was very good at keeping my own personal records then. All I can remember of it, it's a short tower, easy to keep clean, not too much brass, and the lens being a little one, easy to wash down and clean. Whitby itself, which isn't too far away, surely you must have heard of Dracula, then you'll know that Bram Stoker was the author of the book, and apparently he set the story in Whitby, and the scene at the beginning of the book is Dracula coming ashore from the shipwreck vessel just below the abbey. So it's best not to ponder on that book or even read it if you're going to be doing the midnight to 4 watch on the lighthouse there on the Todd. During my very early career as a lighthouse keeper, I was sent to Flamborough Head under training. As you enter the building, in front of you is a double staircase, and at the top is a landing. The watchroom was on the right-hand side of the landing, and my quarters, where I was billeted in, was on the left-hand side. At the foot of that double staircase, on your left was a door leading into the assistant keeper's quarters, and on the right-hand side was the principal keeper's quarters. Normally their doors were wide open until it was afternoon and the visitors were allowed in. Then they were shut. The principal keeper called me down one day, and standing by his door, he said in a overloud voice that his wife had baked me a cake, which I duly accepted and gratefully thanked her, and then went upstairs with what was a chocolate cake, which I did not like chocolate cake and should have said straight away, but how do you do that when somebody's gone to the trouble of making you one? So over the next few days I cut it up and flushed it down the loo to try and get rid of it. And after about 3 days I washed up the plate, came down, knocked on their open door and duly gave her plate back and thanked her very much. As I was about to walk away, a loud shout came from the opposite door, and the assistant keeper in a loud voice also said his wife had baked me a cake. So I turned around and went to that door, and I was duly given a bigger, much more lavish chocolate cake, which I thanked them profusely and went upstairs, and over the next few days started to break it up and flush it down the toilet. Luckily, I was sent away to another lighthouse to do duty before my impression of me struggling up the stairs with an ever increasing size of cake got the better of me. Whitby Lighthouse is no longer a working lighthouse. It's mainly just a museum. You climb to the top just for the views, really. There's no lens left there at all. That went to St Mary's. So it's a museum incorporating the RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Institution museum part. And then you've got local history and the K. Kendall Memorial Museum, all incorporated inside this building. Kay Kendall was a local movie star from the 1950s. Spurn Point was a peninsula about 3 miles long until in 2013 huge storm and tidal surge washed away the road at the top. Now you can only cross at certain times of the tide, so it's always safer to call in at the Discovery Centre that gives you all these details. Also has a lovely cafe, also has part of the lens from the lighthouse. They also do tours from there to the lighthouse. When I visited the lighthouse for the filming, which you see in this video, it was in a sad, derelict, abandoned state, but since then they have had lottery funding and it's now in a pristine condition with lots of displays inside.
And then I had Spurn Point after that, which was quite comfortable. Only it was two-handed. There's a lot to do there. We had the argan lamps, subsidiary lights, 2 subsidiary rooms, the old argan lamp with the wick and the reflector, cleaned with jeweller's rouge, you know. Had regulation flame of 1.5 inches. Higher than that, you get soots and smoke everywhere. That was a heavy wind too for the lens.
By heavy wind you mean?
Well, it was a heavy weight, you know, and you had it's on chains, it was not on the wire rope, and it was a very frequent wind every 3/4 of an hour.
Where did you stay when you were there? Was it in the...
I had the quarters in the compound. Used to be a circular compound there. Very often you used to get covered in sand with the northwest wind. You had to dig out there occasionally, but I was only there as a souvenir keeper.
Yes, well that was a land station up to the beginning of the First World War, and then it became a rock. And it was a 2-handed rock when I was there. 3-handed in the winter, 2-handed in the summer. And no fog signals, so you just kept watches at night. And the gorgeous thing about it was the biggest hyper-radial lens that was ever built by Chance Brothers. And you used to wind up every 45 minutes, and there was about 200 turns on the clock. So if you knocked off for a smoke after you'd done 150 turns, if you knocked off for a smoke, by the time you finished your smoke, the weight was down the bottom again, so you had to wind it up again. And for anybody who doesn't know what on earth I'm talking about the clock and the weights that drive the lens, which works very much like a grandfather clock. When you wind the weights up on Saturday night and it goes all week, but on a lighthouse lens it doesn't go that long, and it's a bigger down weight as well. And we used to have a PK there called old Bill Newby, who must be dead now. And Bill was then 58. And he was a very tall, thin, wiry man. And he couldn't wind up in one go, so he used to wind about 100 odd turns up. Then he used to stop for a breather. And by the time he'd had his breather, the weight was down the bottom again. So he used to have a very horrendous night. But then it was automated while I was there, and all worked from acetylene gas, and the keepers were taken away. In fact, I was the last keeper there. I locked it up and handed the key over to the attendant. And since those days, of course, it's been closed down completely. And apart from being still standing there as a tower and a day mark, it doesn't work at all.